And welcome back to the highlight. We are talking all the news coming out the Bahrain Grand Prix in our Bahrain Fallout episode. From Lando Norris's, well, negativity, what's going on there, to Jack Doohan possibly being safe, to Lewis Hamilton maybe making a key significant development with that Ferrari. So I mentioned Lewis, we may start with Lewis. Here's the last thing I spoke about. So analysis, Lewis Hamilton, this is from motorsport.com. He has finally figured out how his Ferrari likes to be driven, apparently. And, well, let's see what they've got to say. So, as we know, his morale hit pretty much rock bottom after having another, I don't want to say disastrous, but let's say not particularly very good qualifying session in Bahrain. This was arguably the best possible result, though, he had in the end in the race without retirement. In fact, he did win man of the race. He was voted for man of the race in Formula 1, which I guess you could still question it, but the last two men of the race, absolutely not. Anyway, afterwards, what was it? Tsunoda and Kimi Antonelli? No. Hamilton, you could make an argument for. Afterwards, Hamilton, though, he was quite upbeat. And he has been ever since winning the sprint race in China, suggesting he made a breakthrough in understanding the car and how he needs to adapt to get the best out of it. Now, everyone is talking about Hamilton and the brakes. And what's clear, Hamilton said, is that as humans, we really get stuck in our ways. Hamilton said to Sky Sports, he said, and I feel like I've been driving a car with the same team for such a long time, and I've moved to a new car and it requires such a different driving style and settings. I mean, albeit on a slightly much more teeny tiny level, it's like when you get into another person's car or another car to drive, you've got to have to learn all the gadgets, where the windscreen but wipers are, how to turn on the lights, how to flash, etc. So I kind of see where he's coming from on a, let's be fair, on a really tiny level. But he said, I've been using engine braking, which I've never used in my previous years. Much different brakes, as we know, the Ferraris are on Brembros. He's been on CIs. That's carbon industry for the past 15 years. And one of Lewis's strongest points in Formula 1 is his late braking. And he says the car requires a much different style, so I'm adjusting to that, and I think I'm slowly getting it into my head and getting the balance right. He said when Charles does it, he starts with a setup and he stays with it pretty much all weekend. And last week and this weekend, I was a long way from him. Just before qualifying, I got close to him, but then the settings were off. I've got a better job to do throughout the weekend, and I will. So that's quite positive from Lewis Hamilton. I've got to make it easy for myself. He says I'm doing it all the hard way at the moment. I'll try next week to start in a better place and not to deviate too much. He said, I think I figured out how the car likes to drive. So if I apply that next week, if I can qualify better, I'll have a much better weekend. So that's quite good that he's figured it out. But one guy who's not figuring it out that much is this man here, Lando Norris. He's basically come out and said he's not clicking with the MCL39. That's this year's McLaren. And he doesn't have an answer, which is slightly concerning when you've got a teammate that's already won 2 races now to Lando's 1 and is as fast, if not faster, than Lando Norris himself. That's Oscar Piastri. So Lando Norris, he said he was nowhere near his big surprising assessment of his 2025 season so far. He does, though, to be fair, lead the Drivers' World Championship, but he is not the on-form McLaren driver like Piastri is. Remember, he won the first race in Australia, and he hasn't won since. Piastri has won too, but Norris has been on the podium every race. Other than the sprint. But Lando Norris, he makes a surprising confession. He endured, as people are saying, one of the most difficult races of the year. Qualifying in P6 because of Lando, and was followed by a false start, again because of Lando, and an eventual P3, again because of Lando, could have been P2. And Oscar was racing away. The 25-year-old, who's known to be on the more, let's just say, this is something we've always said is not good with Lando, but he's definitely on the pessimistic side of things, let's say. He launched into a debate about his own season, highlighting that something was just not clicking for him. He said, I wish I knew the answer, he said, when asked why he was despondent after qualifying. He said, I don't have an answer, honestly. Even if I did, I wouldn't share it with you guys. But he said, I don't know. I think when you're an athlete, when you're a driver, whatever it is, you just know when things click, when you feel confident, when you feel comfortable. He said, I'm confident that I have everything I need and I've got what it takes. I completely agree. And he said, I've no doubt about that, but I'm good enough and all of those things. But something's not clicking with me in the car. I'm not able to do any of the laps like I was doing last season. He said, then I knew every single corner, everything that was going to happen to the car, how it was going to happen. I felt on top of the car. This year, I could not have felt more opposite. He said, even in Australia, whether or not I won the race, I never felt comfortable, never felt confident. That's kind of alarming because you don't really hear that coming from Oscar Piastri, although Oscar Piastri's, he doesn't really say much at all, does he? So even if he was feeling it, I imagine he wouldn't. So hopefully McLaren can help him get a bit more confidence in the car. Confidence is also key. If he feels confident, he feels more confident to push. When you are able to push faster, but most times you are going to be faster. So, and the team that had a very good weekend, especially in the guise of George Russell. And George Russell did not get a DRS penalty, which is good. But this is from race fans, and they're saying it's unclear if Mercedes or FOM were at fault behind Russell's DRS problem. So the precise cause, as you know, George Russell opened his DRS via the radio, by a different button. It was all very strange, but his DRS wasn't working. So the precise cause of this unusual fault during the Bahrain Grand Prix kind of remains unclear. He said that the article says the Mercedes driver had to cope with several problems on his car at once over the final laps of the race. One of them was the need to operate his drag reduction system manually, as Formula 1 management do not have sufficient accurate timing information to determine automatically when he could use it, which is really strange. Now, the problem arose when FOM stopped receiving timely updates from the transponder in Russell's car. If you remember, he was going up and down, and this also caused errors in the timing graphics displayed. I mean, Russell was moving around, wasn't he, like some kind of minnow in a river. But, however, Mercedes team principal Wolff said after the race it was not clear whether the fault lay at their end, or FOM, Formula 1 management. Basically, he said, you have this beacon. When the car crosses the line, the FOM signal recognises the car. For whatever reason, it didn't anymore. That's what he told Channel 4. He said, so we're not 100% sure if it was a wiring loom issue on our car, or whether it was Formula 1. Russell was also grappling with other problems in his car systems. There was a lot going on, said Wolff. I think this is the driver who won the race. Definitely our man of the race. He had a brake-by-wire system that was only working intermittently. It kept coming back, so you need to expect either an electronic braking or hydraulic, which is a completely different braking point, and he managed that, said Wolff. Russell's race engineer also warned him to expect his steering wheel display might fail. The driver said the final is like Apollo 13 mission, isn't it? The driver said the final laps of the race were exceptionally difficult, as he also had to keep his soft tyres alive over, let's be fair, what was we all expected, quite a long stint. He said, I had all sorts of problems with the car. So last but not least in our Fallout roundup for the Bahrain Grand Prix, Alpine apparently have acted against Flavio Briatore's judgment by making an immediate decision on Jack Doohan's F1 future. So the most under pressure driver on the grid coming into the beginning of the season was Jack Doohan and the Alpine. It was not Liam Lawson, although it was after one or two races. But Jack Doohan made his Formula 1 debut for Alpine at the end of the 24 campaign when Esteban Ocon was dropped in what was the weirdest driver drop ever. We can thank Flavio Briatore for that. But Doohan, as we know, had a difficult time that weekend in Abu Dhabi. But it wasn't entirely his fault. A few things were going against him. However, Alpine have handed Doohan a contract, as we know, for 2025 alongside Pierre Gasly. But the story took a couple of twists over the winter break. Alpine, as we know, they signed quite a few reserve drivers, including Paul Allen and Franco Colapinto. Doohan made mistakes in both Australia and Japan that cost the team significantly, and after 4 race weekends, he's one of the 4 drivers who've yet to score a point. But there have been positive signs for the young Australian that appear to have him earned more time on that Formula 1 grid, which I think is brilliant. And it says here, Alpine set to give Jack Doohan until the end of the summer amid Franco Colapinto pressure. I think that's brilliant. And that's a report from the race. Tad Kravitz also suggested that Doohan had until the Miami Grand Prix to prove he was a better option for Alpine than Colapinto, which he seems to have achieved. The report suggests that Briatore was keen on Colapinto, however, but others in the Alpine camp were determined to give Doohan as much time as possible. Yeah, screw you, Briatore. Completely agree. They go on to say that senior trackside figures have been blown away by Doohan's speed and even surprised by how close he's got onto Gasly on occasions. Doohan has also been working well with his race engineering team, potentially using the experience he gained as Alpine's reserve driver and being in the simulator last year. This is all good news. It's expected that Doohan has until the middle of the season to show. He faced uncertainty, as we know, about his future as early as the Japanese Grand Prix, but have faith in Doohan. We certainly do. Also, have faith in us if you want by subscribing. See what I did there? If you're not subscribed, that would be great. If you are, fair enough. You just watching this is more than enough for us. But if you want to do a bit more, hit that like button. Comment below. Let us know what you think. What was your big story coming out of the Bahrain Grand Prix? Until then, we will speak to you soon. Thank you for watching. But above all else, stay safe.